Peter Schweizer is the author of the new book, Throw Them All Out, which is flying off the shelves, I'm happy to say, and riddled with the facts of the disease that is our now republic. Peter, how are you?
I'm doing great, Glenn. How are you?
Very good. I know you're getting heat, at least from Nancy Pelosi's people, because you worked on Broke. You were one of the guys who helped write Broke, and now Nancy Pelosi is trying to use that to discredit you and say, well, what would you expect? He's a guy who helps write Glenn Beck books.
Well, yeah, that's really one of the tacks she's taken, and really from the beginning, when 60 Minutes first approached her, her strategy was to attack the messenger and to say, this is something hatched by this right winger named Schweizer, and really to their credit, 60 Minutes stood firm and said, look, this isn't about the messenger, it's about the facts, and we've checked out the facts and confirmed them. What do you have to say? But the former speaker continues to hammer away against me and trying to turn this into a question of me being a conservative rather than the facts as they are.
And you hammer Republicans in the book.
I do. I mean, this is a problem of what I call the permanent political class. And I know, Glenn, you've talked about this, that there is a culture in Washington where, yes, there are Republicans and Democrats, conservatives and liberals. But when it comes to looking at them as a whole group, you find that they have a lot more in common than you think. And one of the things they have in common that you think is that they engage in what I call legal graft. Okay, there are things that are illegal to do. So, for example, if you were Senator Glenn Beck, which I think would really shake the body up quite a bit, but if you were Senator Glenn Beck and I gave you $10,000 cash in small bills and we were discovered, both of us would go to jail. It's called a bribe. But if you were Senator Glenn Beck and I gave you access to lucrative IPO shares of stock that are going to net you $100,000 in one day, that's completely legal. And that goes on pretty regularly in Congress. And that's what I mean by legal graft. It's legal, but really, honestly, I don't think it's any more different than a bribe.
Peter, is there anybody that really is standing up against this in Washington? Is there any leader that is clean from this?
There are some. There are some that out of principle decide not to trade stocks, and there's some on both sides of the aisle. But, there was something introduced called the Stock Act a couple years ago. It's been introduced several times, and it would basically just say that we're going to make sure that the laws, make it clear that insider trading by congressmen on the stock market is illegal. That bill had 6 co-sponsors. That was it, and it never got anywhere. Since the 60 Minutes episode, since the book has come out, that bill now has 38 sponsors, and it's been introduced in the Senate for the first time. So they are running scared, but honestly, very few of them are doing it because they, have some moral problem with it. I think a lot of it is they're just getting an enormous amount of heat from the American people.
Are you referring to the Slaughter bill? Didn't she just put forward a bill that I think calls for congressmen to put their portfolios into a blind trust if they go into Congress, right?
That's one of the initiatives that people put forward. The problem with a blind trust is that it's not always completely blind. And what I mean is that, if I'm put something in a blind trust, and let's say I put Glenn in charge of my money, which again
I don't recommend that. No, don't recommend.
Again, which I think would be an intriguing idea. But if I'm in the Senate and I decide to call up Glenn, I can't talk to him and say, buy this or sell that. But I could call up Glenn and say, gosh, there's something working its way through the Senate that's really going to hammer pharmaceutical companies. And if this passes, it's really going to hurt them. Now, I have not violated the terms of a blind trust, but Glenn could go and make all kinds of trades based on this information that I've relayed to him. So even with a blind trust, there are ways to get around this by providing what they call political intelligence. And by the way, there are lobbyists in Washington today who are making more money providing information about things that are going to pass and selling it to hedge funds. They're making more money doing that than actually lobbying for legislation. That shows you how valuable this information can be.
Unbelievable. Now, this is not even, because one thing they didn't really cover in 60 Minutes, and I think this is the big one. I mean, Peter, I've talked about the green thing being a complete and total sham. I called it Crime Inc.
Right.
And it is. It's just an absolute crime. You have laid out, you say you can link $16 billion of the $20 billion given out to Obama financiers, including 10 members of the National Campaign Finance Committee and more than a dozen bundlers.
Yeah, this really, honestly, the green energy program under President Obama has been spreading the wealth for billionaires. What's really happened is they put two fundraisers from the 2008 campaign, one of them named Steve Spinner, the other one called Sanjay Wagel, who were fundraisers for the campaign and went to high net worth individuals, investors, and said, help us raise money, and they raised him a huge amount of money. Those two individuals, after the 2008 election, were assigned to the Department of Energy, and guess what? They were assigned as, quote, strategic advisors to the loan program and to the grant program. And lo and behold, people that gave large amounts of money and raised a lot of money ended up getting government grants and government loans in return. And we actually have a chart in the book, Glenn. We calculated this. It was a great investment for these financiers because for every dollar that they raised for Obama, they have gotten more than $10,000 worth of our taxpayer money in return through these programs. So you've got people that are billionaires getting even richer through this green energy program, which is not about creating jobs at all. It's all about cronyism and directing money to people that are, again, helping you raise money for re-election.
Here's a theory of mine, Peter, and I'd be interested to see if you agree with this. I believe the biggest robbery of all time is happening right now, all over the planet, and many of the officials in the White House and in the Fed and the Treasury and Congress are absolutely involved. The biggest redistribution of wealth is happening. They are taking it from our Treasury, they're taking it from the people, and they are pouring it into the coffers of the very few.
Yeah, it's looting. I mean, we're looking at sort of the rioting and looting that took place in London a couple of months ago, and what's going on with Occupy Wall Street. The real looting is taking place among people in $1,000, $2,000 suits that live in nice salons in New York or out in Silicon Valley, and that has gone on systematically. So you're looking at, for example, Solyndra being really kind of small chump change. You've got investors and people that are getting billions of dollars in our money. To just give you one example, there's a small energy company called Leucadia, which at the time that it was given billions of dollars of access to loan program of our money, Leucadia Energy at the time had about $120,000 in revenue and one employee. And you say, well, how is it possible that this quote-unquote energy company ended up getting billions of dollars in taxpayer money? The reason is that the founder and owner of that company is a gentleman who sat on Obama's 2008 Finance Committee. His name's Ian Cumming. And he is just one of more than 10 financiers that helped raise huge amounts of money for Obama, who now turn around and ended up getting massive, large amounts of money from the taxpayers.
Okay, so I'm going to take a quick break because I have a couple more questions for you, and I want to come back to this. They don't seem to care. They don't. This is so clearly, you are so clearly going to get caught. They're not good criminals, and they don't seem to care. And I want to get your thoughts on why. All right, we're talking to Peter Schweizer. He is the author of the new book, Throw Them All Out. I left with the question, Peter, because you're exposing corruption of almost biblical proportion, and none of them care whether they're running guns to Mexico. They don't care. Nobody seems to care in Washington. Why?
Well, it's a good question. I think part of it is, like with the green energy program, is that they try to cloak it in that they are doing something amazingly good for us, and we just need to accept it and appreciate it. And that doesn't mean that they can't enrich themselves, and they are going to enrich themselves. So they try to cloak what they do, this wealth accumulation and this graft, in something noble and something good, and they're hoping that people won't notice it. But I also think there is the issue that, Washington, D.C. is this sort of hermetically sealed culture that is different from the rest of the country. And the scary thing is that as the rest of the country struggles, Washington, D.C. is doing great. I mean, 7 of the 10 wealthiest counties in the United States are counties now that border Washington, D.C.
That's crazy. I have to tell you, I said this the other day. If I were running for president, which I would not and I never would, if somebody, I would vote for this candidate in a heartbeat that would come on and say with total conviction, I just want you to know, if you live in any of the surrounding areas around Washington, D.C., I recommend you sell your house now because your home price is going to plummet when I get to Washington.
Yeah, no, that's really what needs to be done, because crony capitalism has taken over, traditional free market capitalism.
Would you say this is crony capitalism? Because that's what we were doing. I think this is now crony socialism.
Yes, that's exactly right. And as a friend of mine said, in America today, we have socialism for the very poor and socialism for the very rich, and we have brutal capitalism for the middle class. And that's really the reality. So you're going to see that a lot of the people making money on these green energy programs, they're billionaires. They've already got theirs. Or they're people like Al Gore or Robert Kennedy Jr. that are very comfortable and have gotten very rich, and they're using our money to get even more rich. If I can just give you one example of how this works, there's a company called Amyris Biotechnology that ended up getting a government grant. A guy named John Doerr, who's a Silicon Valley billionaire, and Al Gore, who's his partner, the former vice president, put $16 million into this company. Then Senator Dianne Feinstein and her husband put $1 million of equity into this company. Weeks later, Amyris Biotechnology gets a $25 million cash grant. It's not a loan. This is cash. And they send up a check, and, oh, by the way, it's tax-free. After they get the federal government grant, there's called this halo effect where, wow, this is great. The government's giving them money. It must be a good business and a good company. What happens is they then issue an IPO, and in a matter of less than a year, Al Gore and John Doerr's $16 million is now worth $89 million, courtesy of money that the Obama administration put into a company that was owned by their connected friends. And that's just been replicated over and over and over again.
Wow. Peter, who did you find is the biggest offender of this in Congress right now?
In Congress? Mm-hmm. I think there are a couple of them. One is Nancy Pelosi with the IPOs,
okay.
And you saw her denials, which were amazingly ridiculous.
Yep.
Not only did 60 Minutes cover this, Newsweek had a follow-up piece that explained how they actually got these shares. She has participated in at least 10 IPO deals that we know of, and some of those were literally
these people,
Netscape and other companies where they got access to shares, the stock price doubled or tripled, and then the next day they just sold those shares.
These people are so, and they are the ones, at least Nancy Pelosi, talking about how the rich keep getting richer and how,
yeah.
I mean, it is.
And look at her. Look at
and
what she's doing behind the scenes.
They really think that they can stand with these Occupy Wall Streeters and get away with it. The Occupy Wall Streeters, they're not dummies. You might think they are. They're not.
And they think they're hiding behind the law because it's not illegal. So it's going to be fine. But when the occupiers find out what they're doing, that's not going to go well for them.
No, it won't at all.
But I keep hearing, Peter, about this House Financial Services Committee Chairman, Spencer Bacchus, who's a Republican from Alabama. He's one of the big offenders as well, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Here's a guy who was the ranking member of the House Financial Services Committee. He was during the financial crisis of 2008. While the rest of us were sort of biting our fingernails, wondering what was going to happen, he was actively and aggressively trading stock options. He would have private briefings with the Fed chairman and with the Treasury Secretary, and literally the next day he would buy something called ProShares Ultra Short, which meant he was leveraging knowing that the market was going to go down, and he more than doubled his money. He made tens of thousands of dollars trading stock options, 40 of them during this time period, and he made a lot of money. He has come back and responded and said that on 3 or 4 of the trades I had my facts wrong, which I can check. He doesn't deny any of the others, and he doesn't deny that he was at these meetings and he was actually betting against America.
How'd you get all this information?
Well, I would encourage your listeners to do this to their representatives because we didn't do it to everyone. You can go to opensecrets.org, which has the personal financial disclosures
Unbelievable.
Of all of them. I would look at what their trading activity is, look which committees they're on, and then see how their trading activity correlates with what's going on in their committee. And I think in most cases people are going to be very, very surprised.
Only have about 15 seconds. Is anybody going to go to jail, and do you think there'll be significant change because of this?
I doubt it. I don't think anybody's going to go to jail, and I doubt that there's going to be significant change unless the American people really rise up on this issue.
Oh, they're about to.